as we approach things. And then finally, we look at all current and proposed budget policies and special funds and coordinate with major maintenance and capital improvement projects. So, board priorities. You might be interested in knowing these are the ones that have continued from 2006-07. Debts and liabilities obviously are front and center, but there's Justice Facilities Planning, which has kind of been in sleep mode for a while, but we'll be reporting on that on March 17th. The General Plan Housing Element UVAP, Mill Creek Dams, I think these should all be familiar to you. Then there are board priorities that continue from 2007-08, and that was compensation commitments to staff, because that was kind of the first year of implementing the last contract that was negotiated. And this is when funding assistance for emergency medical services and fire came up, and water supply projects and some other things. And then from 2008-09, really the only priority, in addition to the ones that were carried over, and I would say last year there was a definite intent to try and limit. We said no new priorities last year as well. This one, I think, kind of bubbled to the surface, and that was dealing with retiree health, county contribution to the retirement system, and that continues to be something that is a budget issue. So, board priorities for 2009-10, no new or additional priorities are recommended, and I think you can imagine why. That doesn't mean that there won't be any. It's just that to quote, it's a zero-sum game, and any place we want to add something new or increase something means something else is going to end up getting cut. So next steps for 2009-10 will be working on the framework, and that's revenue projections, looking at state cuts, looking at major projects, incorporating the board's priorities, analyzing and proposing service fees, and analyzing and proposing re-engineering for July 1st, 2009 action. And when I talk about re-engineering, I stopped using the word restructuring because people always thought, oh, you're creating an agency. So I wanted to have something that had a broader meaning. But when you're talking about focusing on particular programs or mandatory versus non-mandatory or whatever, that all kind of fits under that re-engineering phrase. So this is the one picture you get this year, sending out an SOS, and the theme of basically being rescued at sea. And I thought this whole crew dangling from a helicopter was a fitting image here. So the last 3 slides here, just for discussion purposes, a working definition. You can decide what your working definition of a priority is, but we have an A, B, or C possibility. One would be funding all programs at minimum levels and providing additional funding to priority programs. So that's one way of approaching it. Another would be funding priority programs first at current levels and cutting other programs to fit the remaining funding. Or another would be funding priority programs at enhanced levels and cutting other programs to fit remaining funding. So I think that depending on what your definition as a board of priorities, that will give the executive office and department heads direction on how you want to approach this. And, you know, just mentally think about, okay, do you have a priority department or service or whatever? How would you apply this as you're comparing it to other departments? So for your discussion, board priorities 2009-10, what would you like to continue or add? What would you like to discontinue? And that would be from that list of projects and priorities carried over from previous years. And then the last one would be the framework, you know, what revenue opportunities, this is direction you would give to staff and departments. What revenue opportunities do you want us to focus on and bring back in the budget development process? And what re-engineering opportunities do you want us to focus on, analyze, and bring back for your review? So that's a quick run through of all of this, and I think the slide, you know, these last 3 slides of really figuring out what a priority is and what, you know, what you want to do with what your priorities are and what your framework is, and then kind of going back to the beginning of the slides is what kind of involvement does the board want to have and at what levels. Hopefully that was fast enough.
Okay. Comments, questions, board members? None? Any member of the public want to speak on this?
Actually, sorry, one last thing. Jennifer reminded me, in your packet was a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet was kind of a first look at the next year's budget. I would repeat Jennifer's warning. These are numbers. These are only numbers. If they were real numbers, you'd get instructions or whatever the phrase is. But it just kind of shows you where we're starting out from, and where we're starting out from, just kind of putting in some of the fixed costs and comparing them with our revenue projections for 2009-10 as they currently stand. We are looking at somewhere starting off $7 to $8 million in the hole. Now, I would say in previous years, it's not uncommon to start off $3 to $4 million in the hole, and then, you know, you adjust things and bring expenditures down and revenues change, et cetera, and we end up getting to a balanced budget. I would just point out this is twice as large as where we usually start out with, and that's a reflection of the economy and the fact that we're looking at flat and reduced revenues. So, thanks.
So we're talking basically a structural deficit starting at 8 million and not, you know, and it could get worse than that. Any questions on this spreadsheet that Jennifer put out, preliminary draft? It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think it's any news that we haven't received. Is that it, Allison, that you want?
That's the presentation.
Was there any specific issues that you needed at this point for board direction before you move with your budget instruction departments?
Well, usually in the budget instructions, and I don't know if Jennifer wants to speak to this, we would put in what are the board priorities. And in particular, we would look at the, if you say, hypothetically speaking, if you say public safety is a priority, does that mean that you want public safety fully funded according to what the department feels is necessary, and then we take the remaining revenues and spread them to the other departments? Or do you want to maintain current funding or some adjustment there with public safety and then spread the rest? Or what? Because that does make a difference to us, because one of the things we do is assign net county cost. Each year there's a net county cost for each department, and at the very least, we'll say, give us a proposed budget that comes in at the same net county cost as this past year.
But
sometimes we say bring it in lower than assigned net county cost, but we can adjust that net county cost up front if you set different priorities.
yeah, but starting out with a structural deficit of $8 million, I don't see how we can tell any department, giving them any indication that there may be a chance for additional revenues in a 9-10 budget. I think that's doing every department a disservice for even giving the notion out there that there may be a chance for additional revenues. I just wanted to say that.
And if I could just say, at the risk of possibly seeming argumentative, that's part of the discussion we ended up having last year. We knew going in that we were going to have less revenues. Now, it turned out to be even less than what we anticipated, but that affected how the executive office spread costs in the budget. And if you as a board want something different, we want to build it in from the very beginning and to balance the budget based on your direction.
Supervisor Brown?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Jennifer, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I didn't have anything to add at this time. I think Allison kind of covered it. I think the executive office was looking for basically upfront priorities such as possible public safety. That's one of the things that I wanted to